Hello there, Green Knight here. It's time to look at the custom builder for the Fantasy League. So this is basically a clone of Warlords, and you can't mistake one for the other now because I have different graphics, I have different text, I have stripped down the sidebar, I have taken out the or hidden the Clone Wars factions. If you manage to mistake this for the original, then you have some really big issues with your perception skill. It put points into perception. Yeah. Okay. So everything is in here. You can build fleet, latest builds. These are some of my sample fleets, all built to 450 points just to get your juices going. Now I built many fleets sort of to see where my points, where does my point theorizing, how does that translate into actual fleets? So I mean, we could look at some of them, but let's not do that. The builder works as it always does. I think everything is accounted for. Just keep in mind that if you add a ship that Harrow adds a support but takes away a weapons team, if you now take away Harrow, you lose the support team, but you do not get the weapons team back. It has to do with the way things are coded and me not wanting to recode a ton of stuff just to have some fun. It's not worth it. It's not my code to begin with. So if you put on Harrow and then decide to remove it and want the weapons team, you just have to delete the ship and add it back in and everything will be fine. And you see it's strangeness here, which I will comment later. So let's look at the ships. There are only 2 factions in the game at start, and there are only 3 ships each, 2 smalls and 1 medium. That's the core set for you. It contains 1 victory and 1 architect and 1 raider. And for the rebels, it's 1 assault frigate, a CR-90, and a Nebulon B. Pretty evenly matched, in fact. Now, these are virtual ships, so you have as many as you want, of course. But just let's look at the architects. Yeah, it's definitely gotten a few boosts here. Most importantly, navigate, and this is to free it from constant need to navigate. And this is a theme with all small ships. I want them to spend their time doing other things than navigating. Navigating is for the mediums and the large, and for the smalls, but small ships should not be sort of need to navigate a lot because they live and die by their positioning. And shouldn't be incapable of doing other things just because if I don't take navigate, I'm definitely gonna die or be in a bad position. So you can also see that their flak has changed, and this is interesting because now you have a 57-point ship that can shoot red flak. That's not so different from the Quasar, and nobody takes the Quasar 2 just to shoot red flak because it's not very effective. And without the ability to reroll this all the time, the red die is very limited. But you could run a pack of Architects, 3, 4, and make, since they are small and can kite and have wide side arcs, you could make a pretty good overlapping field of fire there. But again, the rerolls, there are no linked turbo lasers to auto reroll this, and no other easy way of mass rerolling that red either. So and hiding behind stuff is just 1 die. But I mean, it's definitely strong. The closest you get is the 70-point Munificent, and this is just 57. And of course, the Quasar 2, but it's not in the game yet, so definitely something to watch out for. light cruiser gets upgraded to a blue, or maybe it's a downgrade. It has better range, but it doesn't hit very often. So in terms of slots, the light cruiser gains a fleet support slot, so it's the combat version of Architects. I think the points difference between the two is such that the command cruiser is definitely interesting now. Just 3 points different. I find that I often take the command cruiser instead of the light cruiser, despite the light cruiser having that supports fleet support slot. I don't think this ever will come down below 54 because it has both a turbo laser and a defensive, so can make this an effective gunship while also providing fleet support. So that's pretty unique. If this red proves very powerful, our command cruiser can come up to 59 again at a later date. One thing that is up for consideration is, should really the Architects have 4 defense tokens? Everyone else has just 3, and the contain really got a boost. Should it be a evade, redirect ship and just lose that contain? Because to be honest, that contain is only there to provide rerolls from Vader Commander. So if one day either before we start, suddenly it's gone, or it gets deleted before we start playing in a later phase, we'll see. That is something you should be aware of. The Raider gets a lot bendier at speed 3 and a little bit more bendy at speed 4. And again, I wanted to be able to fire, to repair, to command squadrons, anything but have all those nav dials. You can also see that both versions get a red die out the front. They swap a blue for a red so they can fire, and of course the Raider 2 could do disposable capacitors and that sort of stuff. It's not great long range ships, not like the Architects, but it adds the tactical depth to them. Otherwise, they are unchanged, except their points have come down. 2 points down for the 1, 4 points for the 2. But even with that just 2 point difference, I find myself leaning heavily on the 1. So I've tried to give the Raider 2 a boost with some upgrades, but this is really a fallacy. Not proven very effective thus far in Armada. Just look at the Wick 2. Got a lot of stuff, Harrow and decaps and whatever, and it's never really been able to shine. But okay, it is what it is for the time being. The Raider, I think, should benefit hugely from the discard for defense effect. Can always get that brace off. So you can set up some good forks and be pretty sure that it will not leave the table before it has unloaded, provided that the defender it doesn't move away, though. That's always going to be an issue. Victory has gained a lot. I don't like the Victory because it is both speed 2, which is very limiting, and it can't turn, and it can't take engine tech, so it can't go any faster. This one can turn better. It also swaps in a salvo, which is quite powerful because 2 red in the back. But this is a speed 2 ship with limited maneuverability, so that balances itself out pretty well. Black upgraded, blue or black depending on the version. Both versions swap some die in the front there. The 2 gets a black, so up close it can actually fire in a black. And the Victory 1 gets a blue in the front. So fewer blacks, but better chance of accuracy and a little bit incentive there on the middle range. Upgrades both get 2 officers now. This would be important, I think, making the beefy mediums relevant. We'll also see this on some of the large ships. Not necessarily all of them, but definitely the ISD and the big Moncals are getting 2 officers. Furthermore, one is getting another offensive retro, and the 2 is getting a defensive retro. So I've let this victory 1 stay at 73. If anything, it maybe come up a point or 2, because now it is really good. 73 is the same as a speed 2 Munificent Star frigate, and this will probably beat up that Star frigate pretty badly. But not pretty badly, but they are evenly matched. But that front arc of the Wick 1 is pretty beefy. The Wick has more hull, but of course the Munificent has better shields and a lot more bendy at speed 2 there. Yeah, not that lot more to say about these, so let's skip to the Rebel ships. And you can see the same here. The mediums have gotten a bit of a boost. The expensive version came down. The cheaper version stayed where it was. And again here, this one might come up to say 74. We'll see. Have that swap, not redirect for salvo, but evade for salvo, which in a way will make the assault frigate less defensible, but salvo is a big deterrent in itself. So black has changed, so we have a red one on the assault frigate and on the black, and a blue-black on the B. Also mixed up the dice pools a bit because I like colorful dice pools, I guess. Had to tone down the rare arcs because salvo on a kiting speed 3 medium, that was just bonkers. That assault frigate, I would have to price it at 85 or something if it had 3 out the back. So instead I mixed it up a little bit. You can see that both are weaker in the back, but 2B has all 3 colors in the front there, so an extra die there, but loses a bit of the range. The 2A actually has a 5th die, a black die in the sides, and tones down the front arc a little bit, but then again, having a black there in the front can be very useful. This is a gunship that you might want to, definitely shoot at long range, but bam, then it comes in double arcs, you paragon, and there is hell to pay. If this one comes up, this one probably also needs to come up. Corvettes, largely unchanged. Little bit of extra yaw. Drops a point. And I hear you say this is an amazing ship, and sure, it is an amazing small ship with limited firepower, competing against ships that have gained quite a bit more. So I'm taking off a point. The B drops 2 points. Very moderate 37. It swaps the defense for offense, which is useful, but defense is really powerful. So, and it gains that red or swaps that red that the Raiders. So it has some potential at long range, even without disposable capacitors. Nebulon. It's not a double brace anymore. And this is part of the reason also why I'm thinking about taking away the 4th token of the Architects. Because this is definitely a downgrade, but you have to remember that, let's say that you got shot by a Starhawk or an Onager or something nasty, and you could discard all these 3 for effect. Evade, contain to kill dice, the brace. So you could survive pretty much anything, even into the side if you have auxiliary shield teams equipped. So they're pretty potent combo for sort of surviving that one big blast, which is a hallmark of the Nebulon, I think. But it's also not very into being picked at. Got an extra yaw here on the first. I didn't want to make it too bendy because I feel that Nebulons, yeah, they should have a maneuvering flaw there. Can be rectified with the nav team or something, but the support gets a support slot, and the escort gets an offensive, so it can increase its squadron to 3. Yay, go Yavaris. This one stays. Price goes down 3 points. The rear got toned down, kind of because I didn't want them to outshine the assault frigate. They don't have an inherent salvo, but still. But notice, escort now has another blue die out the side. There is actually incentive for taking the escort over the support when it comes to fighting. One extra die, at least at medium range, but you have to expose your sides. There are some interesting choices there. So, I'm not sure what you think, but I'm pretty happy with these guys. Um, I mean, there are a couple of ships that could get a few small points adjustment, but I think we might as well start playing. So the only thing that might change before launch is that for defense token on the Architects. But yeah, if you see that it's gone, it's gone. If it's there when we start playing, it's there. But, don't think too much about it. Next up is squadrons. There are 4 types of squadrons for each faction. I don't think I want to sort of delve too deeply into all of them, but we have for the Empire all the usual suspects here. Advanced, bomber, fighter, interceptor. They have different colors on their dice, a lot more red for the Empire, but also some black die. Advanced, it's not an escort, it has a new keyword, it has different dice pool and a much lower cost. This is now a great and interesting squadron. The bomber has a swarm and 2 blue anti-squadrons, so it is obviously better at killing other squadrons. But heavy is worse now, so it dies pretty quickly. But overall more versatile. TIE Fighter is the new escort. Price unchanged. Interceptor is different dice, but it's the same squadron and the same price. I'm still looking at killing stuff. There are some new ace, non-ace limited squadrons. You have Alpha here. Obsidian. Alpha is an escort. Obsidian, a snipe. Scimitar is gold squadron for Empire. Storm adds escort back in. There are some new aces as well. Vader is just Vader on steroids. He's incredibly mean. I did consider making him 25 or even 26, but we'll try him at 24 because he's a cool guy. Deathfire is it's just a good squadron. It's not game changing, but it's good. And look, Brace Evade here. Charles Rat, Escort Ace with Scatter that has a little Rakian effect. Owl now rerolls red dice instead of adding dice, but she works against ships too. Reimer is kind of limited, but he's also the only blue-black bomber in the game at start. Mauler has been completely flipped. He now does damage when you end your movement engaged with him. Spell is the same. Well, obviously not the dice colors, but otherwise. Ved Foslo, TIE Advanced Ace that can reroll or scatter with his defense tokens and has grit. Vampa is just a good, cheap scatter ace. Could potentially be dangerous against ships. Rebels have A, B, X, almost said C, but X and Y wings. The A wing almost unchanged, but it has a black anti-squadron die here. I didn't even consider bringing it down to 10, but it sort of adds a dimension that the rebels don't have, and that is extreme speed and counter. So because it's the only squadron that offers anything like that. I figure it's worth the 11. We have the B-Wing. It's come down a point as S-foils. Basically, it can move speed 3, but then you have to remove a die before shooting. X-Wing also has it, so X-Wing can't shoot at ships while moving speed 4, but can shoot 3 dice at squadrons moving speed 4, so that's pretty cool. More importantly, the B-Wing has been downgraded to red-blue, but it also gained 1 more anti-squadron dice. Both this is a very potent combination, but of course 13 is a lot for a generic. So per fleet point, it's not that powerful. X-Wing, Bomber Escort as foils, swaps in on black hair, but price came down 2 points. Y-Wing came down a point as a blue-black anti-squadron, but heavy hurts it more. For A-Wings, we have Marvel. He's the new ace. He's a bomber that does face-up damage when he dies. Blue Squadron, 2 versions, so you can only have 2 total of these 2. They have snipe. This is a worse B-Wing bomber, but it has snipe. On the other hand, 2 blue is very reliable. Dutch is John Dutch Wonder now, otherwise he's the same but more expensive because shutting down enemy squads is very brutal. Grey Squadron, it's a worse bomber and it's a lackluster dogfighter, but it has both bomber and grit. It's not heavy and has 6 hull and costs the same as an X-Wing. Very interesting take. Also combines good with Horton, which lets bomber reroll red dice. Ibtisam, B-Wing bomber that can be brought back from the dead, much like a built-in reserve hangar deck. Luke is like Vader on steroids. He's got Adept, got Bomber, he's got Grit, got this nasty red-blue attack pool against ships. Nera Dantes, B-Wing Ace, X-Wings have a weight, by the way. Snipe is basically the Ace version of the Blue Squadron bomber. Peppered, A-Wing with Grit, Bane, a cheap X-Wing Ace that has Swarm, important, and also gets to add the dice when attacking damaged squadrons or ships. Damaged, remember, is defined by the rules as having taken damage cards or all points. Psycho is the same, but 18. Wedge is Bomber Grit and that precise keyword, and he gets to add dice versus ships as well, so he's very nasty. I mean, I could see myself running Thane, Wedge, Luke, and someone else. I mean, all these 3 guys could roll a blue and a black against ships. Very dangerous. Maybe throw in Horton as the 4th ace there. Very interesting combination. Get some rerolls. Could be very lethal. And some generics. Always use the generics. Some X-Wings for escort, some Grey Squadron, maybe some B-Wings. Lots of options there. So, those were the squadrons, quick and dirty. Limited selection of upgrades from the start, 4 commanders for each. Motti works on huge ships, and he has a little thingy for friendly squadrons that races. Read that. Vassal is only once per activation. Screed is once during each ship's activation, but he could potentially do his crit thing while a squadron is attacking. Read carefully here. Tarkin is a bit like young Tarkin, but he can hand out tokens and a dial. Read him carefully. Arm the same. He can also hand out bonus dials. The Donna is completely different. He's now a rebel screed, but instead of spending a die to change the die to a crit, he can Change the die to a crit if there is already a crit in the attack pool. It can be completely useless or it can be very useful. Madine is costed very high because many ships have better yaw now, and he just flat out adds a yaw. So he basically, as long as you can regulate your speed through other means, you can possibly not navigate at all, and this is hugely powerful. Matma gives a boost to evades. Also evades on squadrons, but at the moment only the X-Wing aces have evades, because A-Wings have scatter and B-Wings and Y-Wings have 2 braces. But Matma is interesting because you can always get your evades off, and the evades have been given a little bit of a boost. Projector is completely different. They just give out redirect tokens, so there is a way to get that second redirect if your victory wants it. ECM is the same, reactive is the same, redundant shield is thematically the same, but now they can give you a very powerful boost when you need it. Blast doors are the same, but you are almost certain to get rid of those 3 cards. So for 5 points, this is a steal also for smaller ships now. Net, more expensive, but more flexible. Munitions, parts, the same. Repair crews, thematically the same, but they trigger after movement. ICB, the same, but cheaper. Ion pulse missiles. This is a new card, and you will see several cards like it. Basically, you can fire 1 black die per attack at medium range, so you get the blues and 1 black at medium. Perfect for a raider, for example, but you could take it on a victory too. But then you can only resolve this critical effect, and it is a blue or black. So good chance of triggering, and when it triggers, it kills 2 shields. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Combine that with XI7, I dare you. Leading shots can only reroll 3 dice. SV7s, no change at all. Decaps, they pretty much work as before, but you have to read the hard text more carefully. It's a modification also, and this restriction here means that you have to have either iron or turbo laser in your upgrade bar. So, for example, the torpedo corvette could not take this card. Hangar Bay, the same. Islands are the same and not. They have shorter range, but trigger after the ship moves. So the Devastator can actually tail chase Tantive 4 and use its tractor beam on it. PD reroute is the same, but also has a little gunnery team effect. Quads, the same, but size restricted to bring its price down. There are no 3 squadron limit, but price came down. Monty, the same, but it also works if the attacker is bigger than you, so it's perfect on, say, an Architect or a Raider. Definitely worth the 5 points. This should go, if you have a small flagship, one for that. Definitely. Blizzard is no longer a joke. She still looks at enemy dials, but if you guess correctly, you can either change the top command of a ship, friendly ship, or a friendly ship can gain a command token. Something which is very interesting. Yularen is the same but cheaper. DCO, it's completely different. Medium or large gives you an extra contain. Remember, you cannot have more than 2 of the same token. So she's gonna eat the second officer slot on many medium ships, I'm sure. But costs a bunch, and well, there is the opportunity cost of using an officer slot. Defense liaisons are thematically the same, but they come with some tokens, and if you do not change the top dials, you could also spend tokens from the card to resolve the matching command. Veteran Captain has 2 tokens and is very flexible. Talon is the same almost, but he can unactivate a squadron at distance 1 to 3, not that squadron you activated. Lando is the same, but gains an offensive application. So you can either discard for offense or discard for defense. Very much like his squadron. So again, thinking thematically, Leia has an opportunity cost to use her because you have to spend a token or dial to use her. But if you spend a dial, target ship gets a matching token, so she could change both the dial and hand out a token for that dial token power combo. So it requires perhaps a little bit more planning to use. Ramus is the same, but cheaper. ACM, APT are the same, but they also, like the Ion Pulse missiles, let you shoot 1 black at medium range. But they only trigger on black crits, and thus are not modifications, so there's a logic behind this. Cannon launchers add 1 to front, left, and right instead of 2 to the front. So rewards double arcing. Rapid reload is very much like dual turbo lasers, but requires you to have 1 black die to begin with in the die pool. But interestingly, it works on salvo attacks. Still, it's at this stage, it's fairly niche, but I think as you proceed, you will see some ships that want to take this. Ox Shields, the same. Engineering team is the same, but if you spend a dial, you get 2 points instead of 1. Same with if you spend a token dial, you get 2 extra points. And you can spend charges or tokens from the card to resolve the command. Same goes for nav team. Very much like engineering team, starts with some tokens. And skip to sensor team. It's the same theme here. This used to be a weapons team. Now it is a support team. And it has a consfire requirement, and it's only close long, so sorry, onagers. And you can spend tokens from this card to resolve. So very interesting, these engineering, nav team, and sensor team. I mean, Madine with nav team, I think could be very interesting because then you have those two nav tokens. You don't have to translate that into extra yaw because you get extra yaw from Madine, so you can just have them as a reserve for extra speed changes. For example, projection experts, that's the old advanced projectors, it's now turned into support team. Now immediately you should think about Munificent. With this, yes, will definitely could maybe be a thing. Not a huge thing, but it could be a thing. They only have 1 redirect. So, and in case you didn't notice, this is faction lock to Rebel and Empire. So no getting 2 redirects for Obi-Wan, for example. Sorry, Obi. Audacious, new title, fly fast, get a red attack die, Centicore, limited to 1 to 5. Hand of Justice works on itself. A sailor prevents the defense tokens from being locked down. Corvus can't be a flagship, must redeploy within 5. Has a built-in boosted comms. Impetus, cost down, can shoot black die at blue range. Corruptor also gives up grit. Dominator can sometimes use blue die at long range, and cost came down quite a bit. This should be a good card now. It screams for disposable capacitors, by the way. Arrow adds support but takes away weapon slot. And it just flat out says that yo at speed 1 is 2. Helan. Very good title at 4 points because it can let your assault frigates evade again. and you can have 2 of them. Not unique. Gallant Haven is, it's not exactly the same, but it's thematically the same, but you have to read the card. Paragon works on salvo. So if you were sure you were going to take Echelon, you probably now want to take Paragon instead. What can I say? So you can shoot red, red, black if you have shot at the attacker before during that round. This is good. So also on that, flak guns, well, there aren't any flak guns at the moment, but you get my point. The Nonna's Pride, assault proton torpedoes at medium range with blue dye. Jaina upper point. It can now shoot unimpeded through dust clouds. That's one implication of the rewording. Antive adds officer, so Leia and Ramus can go aboard, but no offensive or defensive retrofit. And the passing of the token is an exhaust. Salvation is down 2. Works in any arc, but only on red dice. Sorry, Sato. Vanguard gets the weapon slot, loses the support slot. Sorry. But it gains a redirect token, so you don't have to replace. So Vanguard would have Wade, Brace, Contain, Redirect. So I think that's, but it will only have 1 shield in the sides. So it's an interesting card. Definitely not an auto pick. Yavaris is capped at 3 squadrons. And if you read it carefully, I've also done something else. That probably won't be very important, but it's a change. Fuel turbos came down a point, can be resolved during a salvo attack, but there is a red die restriction. Enhanced armament came down 2. H9 came down 2, but it's still a modification and it only works on red dice. Dice 7 unchanged is going to be important. Flight controllers capped at 3. Gunnery teams unchanged. Ion techs requires you to have an ion slot, reroll 2 blue. But if you start re-rolling on your flak shots, then you cannot declare any additional squadron targets. So let's say I shoot a squadron, and then I re-roll, then I cannot declare any more squadron targets. Oh, there's a limit. And this limitation spreads to Ordnance Expert because, to be honest, it's a little bit vexing that every raider should only take this. So now maybe you have to take another upgrade. And this needs ordnance, so again, sorry, onaggers. Veteran gunners, completely different. Requires a turbo laser on the ship. You don't fill the turbo laser slot, but you have to have a turbo laser slot. And you reroll 2 reds if you're beyond close range. So it's going to be a great card if you can keep the range open, and not so great once the enemy is closest to pistol shot range. So those are the upgrades, and we shall look at the objectives, and then we are done. Only the core objectives are in the game. Advanced gunnery, the tactical aspect has been toned down, and the scoring is completely different. It's just a 40-point bonus. Most wanted, same tactical benefit, 40-point bonus flat. You can recognize this maybe from Mercy Mission, sort of inspired by that. Opening salvo, it's the same, but the wording is a bit different because this term crippled is defined by the rules. Precision strike, you can take a squadron token instead. Cannot score more than 1 token per attack, and scoring has come down. Contested outpost, can't declare ignition attacks close to the station. Same points. Fire lanes, there are some limits on the token, and also the rules limit you so that you can't put tokens under squadrons or squadrons on top of tokens and a few other things. So it's more balanced now, I think. and the scoring comes down. Flint ambush, very interesting. It's a bit of a squadron deployment restriction there, but more importantly, the first player has to pass his first turn on the first round. So basically, the second player gets to shoot first on round one. And then, if the first player doesn't lose a ship, which he probably won't because of the new defense token rules, he can go last first in round two, or when we go from 1 to 2. So last in round one and first in round two. So it's an interesting interaction there, but it's not overpowered, but definitely different. Hyperspace Assault, you can move the tokens further, otherwise it's mostly identical. Dangerous territory, obstacles have to go into the ambush zone, so not putting them far out in the corner. Everything goes into the middle box there. And the first player cannot avoid the effects of overlapping, not even Genus Light. Intel Sweep, if tied for tokens, second player gains, you guessed it, 40 points. Minefields, yeah, this is different because you have to abide by all the normal restrictions for deploying obstacles, except the second player places them all and they have to be beyond distance 3, but no placing them outside the deployment area and setup area, sorry, and no putting them in they have to be beyond distance 3 of the long edges, all the usual things. And then you have more flexibility with the mines. This is possibly my least favorite objective because it just doesn't give the second player any points, so there's no incentive to move forward for the first player. So it just encourages castling and boring games. But okay, I didn't want to change it too much. The player positions is the same, but the scoring came down to 10. And that's very briefly every card that's in the game in phase 1. So I hope this feels new and exciting, but also familiar. That's the idea here. I don't want to completely change the game because I love this game. I've sort of taken what is already in there and tweaked it a little bit. So see you on the 28th.